This episode is brought to you by Philips One by Sonicare. One-up your brushing with Philips One. It's a big step up from your manual toothbrush, with both rechargeable and battery-powered versions, so you can choose the one that best fits your life. Learn more at philips.com/one. That's PHILIPS.com/ONE.
Cowboys have 2nd and 18. Setting up a screen for Elliott with blocking. Huge play. Elliott into Steeler territory. Down the sideline. And in for the touchdown. No flags.
You're listening to BetQL Daily, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, with Joe Ostrowski, Joe Giglio, and Aaron Hawksworth from BetQL.
It's good to hear the voice of Joe Buck. That's how you know big games are back. We get one tonight. It's on NBC. No Joe Buck. We'll hear him on Sunday. But we get the Cowboys and the Bucks tonight. Let's talk some football here. Joe G, Joe O, Aaron Hawksworth, BetQL Daily, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. Ed Egros about to join us here from FanDuel. Of course, Ed, the host of the Odds and Eds podcast. You can also check out the Football Analytics Show. Ed is doing with Ed Fang of the Power Rank heading into the NFL opening weekend. Ed's been with us before. We love having him on. Ed, let's start here. Cowboys, Bucks tonight. It's a big number and it's moved. It's Bucks minus 8.5. The total 51.5. What are you feeling tonight? When you look at the game, when you break this one down, what's your first thought? Points, Bucks. How you playing tonight, Ed?
Well, first of all, this is the absolute perfect example of why you need to pounce on a line early. So when we get to the regular season, when these things come out Sunday night, Monday morning, whenever, that's when you need to get your value there. Because when it was at 6.5, it was a terrific Tampa Bay opportunity. Now all the value has been beaten down, and it's getting dangerously close to where I don't think it's even teasable, or at least it's getting close to that point. So as far as where I still think there's value, to me it's going to be at the total. Not so much because I think Dak Prescott's going to have a phenomenal performance, but I think as the game wears on and Tampa Bay jumps out to a sizable lead, that's when Dak is probably going to try different things, and then he'll have a success there offensively. So there is some variability with such a large spread, but do I think both teams can combine for, say, 52-53? Eventually, I think so, yeah.
Ed, this matchup that we have tonight kind of reminds me about our conversation that you just hinted at with the total a week ago, just how much more offenses matter right now. And we usually don't handicap the defenses too much, and that's not the case at the college level. But with this matchup tonight, what are some things that you consider when looking at the defensive side, if anything? And I say this specific matchup reminds me of that conversation because we are talking about the extremes. The extremely poor defense of the Cowboys. They add to it only via the draft and a change at defensive coordinator. And we have an extremely, really, really good defense on the Tampa Bay side, whether we're talking about against the run or the pass. Does that come into your thinking at all?
It's interesting because one thing I would probably push back on, and it's more of sort of a proviso more than anything else, is when you look at this Tampa Bay defense during the regular season, in terms of, say, EPA per dropback, they were actually pretty average. When they had their injuries to the defensive line, Tampa Bay did, then there were some passing attacks that really exploited that, in large part because, say, someone like Drew Brees, for instance, was not getting pressured too much, and so he was able to sling it around to 10, 11, 12 different targets on that one Sunday night game. And so it's one of those things where everything has to begin with generating quarterback pressures if you are Tampa Bay, because I think the secondary still has some real questions. But it's possible that given the absence of Zach Martin along the offensive line for the Cowboys, that Tampa Bay will be able to generate pressure, at least when it comes to the first half. And so it's something where, yes, this Tampa Bay defense is an important asset and is an important factor in handicapping this game, but the pass defense still needs to show me something where, yeah, the Super Bowl was a phenomenal performance, but with a larger sample size, there are some real questions.
And I think as people try to build some parlays and props for tonight's game, we realize that the Cowboys are going to have to throw. If they're going to have any chance to win, they're going to have to throw. Probably coming back late in this game, going to need to throw. But it's interesting. Usually with running back by committee, we're not sure where to go. It's difficult in fantasy. It could be difficult in props. I find that a little bit here with the Cowboys receivers. There's so many good ones. All three are really in their own right stars. Cooper's a great player. CD could be a great player starting this year. And Gallup's been a really good player. Of those three guys, when you think about props, think about who might be the lion's share of the targets. What are you thinking? How would you play Cowboys props tonight if they're going to throw a lot? Do you see Lamb breaking out? Is it Gallup? Is it Cooper? What are you thinking on the Cowboys and how this might look?
To me, I think Michael Gallup is the one guy I'm looking at because Amari Cooper, experienced veteran, going to get his yards, no question about that. CD Lamb, the highly touted second-year player, he's fine. I think Michael Gallup seems to be overlooked, even though I would consider him to be just as talented as the other two. And he's someone with a lot of versatility. You can play him out of the slot. You can play him on the outside. And I think he is the one, when you take a look at advanced, weighted opportunities over the last couple of years, Michael Gallup has been pretty high when you're looking at all the receivers in the National Football League. And to me, I think this is going to be no different where, Cooper can get his, Lamb can get his, Gallup seems to be overlooked, and that's when those opportunities exist, especially in the prop market.
Ed, you have the Week 1 NFL board of the numbers widely available right now. What is your favorite bet?
My favorite bet is taking the Jets at it's been 4.5 and 5. It's kind of been moving around, but I love the Jets here against the Panthers, in large part because I'm a big Zach Wilson fan. Too many reasons to respect his game out of BYU. When you look at his EPA per dropback numbers in college last year, BYU was the fourth best offense in America. And I get strength of schedule last year makes things a little bit tricky in terms of really evaluating which offenses were the best, but there's a reason why he was picked number 2 overall. And you add to that, this offense has Corey Davis coming from Tennessee. He is an underrated receiver. Elijah Moore, getting him in the draft, he was a real catch there. So now all of a sudden you're going from a Jets offense that was completely anemic and poorly coached to one that is coached significantly better, great quarterback, true weapons, some experience there as far as the veterans are concerned, and you're going up against a Panther team where, look, Sam Darnold may be a decent NFL quarterback. We don't know when you put him into a new system, but I'd rather take someone where, yeah, a rookie quarterback is an unknown, but there are a lot of factors in terms of what makes a good draft pick that make him really appetizing, especially with a big number like 4.5 to 5. I love the Jets there.
This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football is back, and the best bet you can make is downloading the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It doesn't matter if you're new to gambling or an old pro, FanDuel has something for everyone. And as an official sports betting partner of the NFL, you know your bets are safe. There's also never been a better time to use FanDuel, because right now, you'll get up to $1,000 back if your first bet doesn't win. You can even turn a small wager into a big payday with a same-game parlay bet. Just sign up with the promo code Spotify to place your first bet risk-free on FanDuel Sportsbook. Download FanDuel today. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online real money wager only. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 14 days. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This episode is brought to you by HP Plus. In a world full of smart devices, shouldn't your printer be smart too? It is with HP Plus. These printers know when they're running low, so you always get the ink you need delivered right when you need it. Plus, you save up to 50% on ink, so you can print whatever you want, as much as you want, anytime you want. Huh, that is pretty smart. Get 6 free months of instant ink when you choose HP Plus. Conditions apply. Visit hp.com/smart for details.
Ed Egros of FanDuel joining us here talking some football as we head towards Week 1 tonight. The Cowboys and the Bucs kick off the NFL season. And let's stay in that division. A really interesting matchup. Miami at New England on Sunday. Tua, who became the starter last year in Miami, in and out, up and down. I'm not a big Tua guy. We'll see if he can improve in year 2. And the other side, it's Mac Jones, rookie, Alabama. Well, what a quarterback room all three of those guys now going to start in the NFL. Where do you lean in this game? It's New England, 3-point home favorites against Miami.
I really like the Patriots here, and I think there are 2 reasons here, and specifically they involve Miami. Number one, I kind of push back on the idea that you need to give a quarterback time to grow and evolve and polish. I feel like with today's game, the state of football in general, that if you are someone with a lot of resources and you come from a great program, then you are almost NFL ready, so to speak. And I think that's what you should expect out of someone like Tua. And there were a couple of good performances, but there were a lot of clunkers as well. The other thing, too, when you look at this Miami defense, that's really what got them to the playoffs to begin with. But you can't expect that defense to have nearly as many takeaways as they did a season ago. Takeaways are not sticky from one season to the next. And so if the defense falls apart, yet Tua is still a big question there. Meanwhile, the Patriots have Mac Jones, who looked great in the preseason. I actually think that's an indicator for good things to come. Not to mention, the Patriots defense gets some people back, and that should be fine, especially within that secondary. And so there are enough factors to me to say, yeah, I think the Patriots can take care of it.
Ed, any other games that really jump out that you have a strong opinion on in the NFL this weekend?
So the Giants and Broncos, that one is interesting in part because if you didn't have the quarterback position in football, then Denver should be a runaway favorite as far as that's concerned. But because there are quarterbacks in football, who's better, Teddy Bridgewater or Daniel Jones? I don't necessarily think that's too clear-cut because, look, Daniel Jones is a mobile quarterback, and so there are some possibilities there. With Bridgewater, he's coming into this new system, and, I like his receivers more, but what can we expect out of him? I'm not quite sure, and there are some advanced metrics that would suggest that, Daniel Jones can be turnover-prone, but if that's nipped in the bud, so to speak, then he might actually be pretty decent, and especially if you're laying 2.5 there. I like the Giants at home.
So there's a home dog. Ed, do you like any other dogs? There's some big ones this week. Some home dogs. Washington's a home dog. And then some bigger, spreads later on. Obviously, the Lions are big home dogs. The Bears, big dogs. Any big dogs you like in terms of just either covering the number or winning outright?
The Houston one is interesting to me. 3-point dogs against Jacksonville. I know I've mentioned this on more ways before, but the Jaguars, I think they're an appealing bet to win the AFC South just because the rest of the division may not be very good. But Houston's interesting because this is when you can kind of pull out all of your tricks. I don't think Tyrod Taylor's a bad quarterback, but there are some real position questions there all the way around. But if they're going to sneak up and get a Week 1 victory, it might be in a division, in the division at home Week 1, and then maybe they do what the Jaguars did last season and lose the remaining games. But that one seems to be pretty interesting. Other than that, there aren't too many that are really screaming at me at this point. But still, there's still time for things to move, right?
With Ed Egros, he is our guest here. He does the Football Analytics Show. Make sure you download it. Ed, what games in the college level are screaming at you this week?
So, one thing that I think is interesting if we look at, sort of the landscape, and I'm based in Los Angeles. I know because there's traffic everywhere. But it's funny that, a lot of people are knocking the Pac-12 because of all the upset losses that happen in the North. But if you actually break it down by division, I would argue that the Pac-12 South is actually quite good. What UCLA did against LSU was impressive. I still think USC is the team to beat in that division. I think Utah is really good as well. That division's not terrible. And so when you look at, some of the lines in terms of those games, I think there may be some value just in part because reputationally the Pac-12 took a hit, but I think it should be a little bit more focused than say, what nationally is being said about the conference. And so there's one aspect there. The other thing, too, that I think is interesting is this Ohio State game is intriguing to me because I was in large part disappointed by all the national championship contenders in terms of what they showed us offensively, except for Alabama and except for Ohio State. Yeah, I know it was just one half when the Buckeyes put it all together, but sometimes a half is all you need. And so I feel like Ohio State will pick up where they left off, and then you have a young quarterback sort of figuring things out, and on-the-job training should be fine as far as that's concerned. And so for Ohio State, I'm expecting a blowout win there.
Ed, UCLA looked really good last week. We talked a little bit about them this week on the show. To beat LSU the way they did, to blow them off the ball the way they did, it was impressive to watch. Are you buying in on UCLA really surprising and being quite a good team this year?
I am. I am. Like I said before, I think the division is tougher than maybe we're giving it credit for, and so I think there are going to be some interesting challenges there moving forward. But DTR is a great quarterback. We saw that. He didn't throw a lot, but when he did, he was effective. Ground game, offensive line, all of those things were impressive. And I think, too, you wish LSU didn't have the challenges that they did coming into that game. But at the same time, I look at it and go, I don't necessarily think fatigue or uncertainty in terms of preparing for the game had to do with being blown off the ball like that. I think that was more UCLA overpowering them. And that makes me an LSU seller for sure, but it also means that UCLA, has enough impressive things going for it to where, that offense should be the quintessential Chip Kelly offense that we've been waiting for the last few years in Westwood.
We've got about a minute left. Was there any one player that jumped up and you think that they came onto the Heisman scene?
Well, when you look at what Alabama was able to do, that to me was especially impressive. One thing when I look at sort of the Heisman odds situation is I never like the favorites because I think it's always going to be someone coming out of nowhere, to snag it. There were a lot of mid-major performances that I really, really liked. I wonder when that day is going to come where Heisman voters are willing to take an American Conference quarterback or a Mountain West quarterback and really give them their fair shake. I don't know if it's going to happen this year because, if Bryce Young out of Alabama is able to make it work, then okay, that he's going to win the award. But you've got some great, American performances that I think are worthy of some consideration. I just wonder if the mid-major thing is still something that we can't get over.
Eddie Gross, check out the Football Analytics Show that he does with Ed Fang of the Power Rank. Fantastic information there. All right, coming up next, the NFL kicks off this evening, and we're going to go prop shopping lightning bets in about 20-25 minutes from now. So keep it locked here on BetQL Daily the rest of the hour. We are presented by FanDuel Sportsbook.